Yo, Shortbox Nation, this is Botter, and I'm here to tell you right now that con season starts early this year with the return of Northeast Florida's premier anime, comic book, and sci-fi event, Collective Con. That's right, Northeast Florida's largest pop culture convention returns for its 10th year on March 8th through the 10th at the Prime Osborne Center in Jacksonville, Florida. 10 years of Collective Con, they're pulling all the stops out to make sure this is a can't-miss event. And the guest list they got going, don't even get me started on the guest list. I mean, they've got A-list celebrity guests and voice actors from some of your favorite movies, anime, and video games like Elijah Wood and Sean Ashton, Ray Park, Trisha Helfer, Ross Marquand, Max Middleman, and Bo-Katan herself will be there, Katie Sackhoff. Tell me what other convention is giving you the opportunity to meet Frodo and Sam from Lord of the Rings, Darth Maul, and One Punch Man all under the same roof. Only at Collective Con. And if you're looking to get some of your favorite comics signed, or if you want to get an original sketch from some of the best comic artists in the world, well, you're in luck, because there'll be plenty of comic and creator guests there, like DC comic artist extraordinaire Clay Mann, Harvey Award-nominated illustrator John Taylor Christopher, Marvel and DC cover artist Chris Stevens, and acclaimed Star Wars author Timothy Zahn. They'll all be at Collective Con this year. And if you're looking to bring the family, or if you want to make a weekend out of it, you're in luck, because there'll be so much going on at Collective Con that weekend in the form of vendors, fan panels, video game tournaments, cosplay contests, after parties, and a bunch of fan events. You can purchase single and 3-day weekend passes now using the link in this episode's show notes, or by going to collectivecon.com to book your tickets and hotel. Buy your tickets now, and I'll see you at Collective Con, March 8th through the 10th. Now let's start the show. What would you say was the biggest, I guess, like culture shock? I mean, did you learn something so drastic that you would not have learned had you not been in that studio?
Oh man, I mean, just the amount of, not pressure, but because I would always try to impress, like let's say Mark Silvestri or the other artists, but I also knew that I needed to have a really good work ethic to impress the editors. So I knew I couldn't take 20 hours on one page or something and impress Mark Silvestri, right? I knew I couldn't do that, even though that's what I wanted to do, because the editors were there. They were really the ones who were actually going to give me the gigs. So I would come in during the day, work while the editors were working, then I would go home, and then I'd come back at night when like Silvestri was there and the other artists. So I was I was exhausted, man. But it was worth it. It was worth it because I feel like I did both. I earned the respect of the editors, but I also, got to have time with the artists and stuff like that. And they were both valuable.
Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the Shortbox Podcast, Season 7.
The Shortbox Podcast was recorded before a live internet audience.
Yo, Shortbox Nation, welcome back. This is episode 330. New friends and first-time listeners, welcome to the show. You're now tuned into the Shortbox Podcast. Thanks for joining us. My name is Botter, and today I'm bringing you a great conversation with Tyler Kirkham, a 20-plus year comic veteran who has worked for all the major publishers on some top titles like Green Lantern, Superman, Venom, Deathstroke, and a whole lot more. He's also responsible for the upcoming Gotham City Limit store-exclusive variant of Moon Knight #1, coming out next Wednesday, July 21st. And before we welcome Tyler to the show, I want to thank our sponsor, Gotham City Limit, for bringing you this episode commercial-free. Gotham City Limit is Jacksonville's premier shop for comics, toys, collectibles, and more. So if you live in the area or find yourself passing through Jacksonville, stop by the shop on Southside Boulevard and tell them the Shortbox sent you. And last but not least, there is still time to enter in our giveaway for a free tattoo session from the talented artists over at Black Hive Tattoo. Everything you need to know about the contest and how to enter is in a link in our show notes, so check that out if you're interested. Let's give it up one more time for our sponsor and welcome today's guest of honor to the show. Shortbox Nation, it's my privilege to welcome Tyler Kirkham to the show. Hey, Tyler, how are you today?
Hey, what's going on, man?
Thank you for joining us on a Monday evening. You are probably my first interview where you've politely requested to go on video because of a deadline. And I fully respect that. You mentioned that you're working on a Star Wars comic. Are you able to share details on that?
It's a Star Wars cover, like the War of the Bounty Hunter.
Yes, that is right. I think you've already done a few of the variant covers, right?
I've done a couple, and this is the third one, and it's due today, so I'm like, oh, I better just.
Well, you know what? That makes me appreciate this interview even more, and for you taking out your time. I saw that you posted on your Instagram that you were recently on the Comics Court podcast talking about Loki, among other things. I wanted to know really quick, what do you think about Loki so far?
Well, that's the funny thing, and I told him too. I was like, well, I haven't watched Loki yet, so I'll jump on and talk, but I haven't actually watched it yet. I'm waiting. We're getting through another show currently, and then we'll start it. But they were chatting about the Venomized Loki, and I did that Venomized Loki cover a couple of years ago, and they created a Funko Pop off of it.
Yeah, they had a whole line of I think of the Venomized different like Marvel characters. Yeah,
and he just kind of he was like, "Would you like to see that in the show?" And of course I would, but and he was just asking if as an artist we get paid if like Marvel uses something like that, or if like something that we drew gets put in a show or a toy or something. And I was just like, well, not really, unless it's something that we actually created. But they told me to draw Venomized Loki, so I didn't really create Venomized Loki.
Yeah, but you lended your artistic talent to making him a total badass.
Yeah, I think there you go. Yeah, so I mean, no, I need to watch that show because obviously I keep seeing a lot of stuff about it.
I imagine you don't have a lot of free time to just watch whatever shows you want. You probably pick the absolute best of the best, or the things that you absolutely want to watch. What are you currently watching?
I'm personally watching on my own. I'm getting through Attack on Titan.
Nice. So you got love for the animes.
Yeah, I mean, I used to watch them all the time. Like Ninja Scroll and those, of course. But this is one that I've heard about forever, and I just never started watching it, and I think it's done. So I'm watching the whole series.
That's the way to go. I kind of wish I would have done the same. I had watched season 1 when it first dropped, and I was riding like the hype and all of that, and then. I think there was a break between season 1 and season 2. And then that's usually where I fall off big time. If there's a break between seasons, I end up, playing catch up with other shows or getting into other rabbit holes. And I'm such a bad return watcher, So yeah. I commend you for being able to watch it all in one set. I mean, it's definitely the way to go. I feel like in this age of like every week, a new show is dropping.
Totally. I mean, I'm still on season 1 because the seasons are really long.
Yes, they are.
So, but it's like one of those things where, I'll go to bed and I'll like turn on an episode and I might like fall asleep during it or something. But so it's a very slow process. I have a lot of material to watch.
I know that well.
I also want to watch the new Castlevania season though. I don't know if you've seen that or not.
I have not seen it.
Anime?
Yeah, no, the new Netflix one, right? The new Netflix one.
Yeah. Season 1 was really cool.
I have not personally watched it, but my co-host Ed, every time I know he championed like the first season, and then whether it was a new season or a different show overall, he's been pretty much hyping it up anytime they make any announcement on it.
Oh wow!
So during my research, I came across your Spawn piece that was used, or really your involvement with last year's charity art auction that was run by Jim Lee, to benefit the shops that were hurt by the pandemic. And I was curious to know, what are some of your favorite comic shops, and if there was any must-visit shops where you're from, because you mentioned that you live in Utah, right?
Yeah, I have a local shop that I go to here. It's one that's been around, since I was a kid. I mean, it's called End Zone, and it's here like 15 minutes, 10 minutes from my house, and I feel like if someone was going to be driving through this area, it would be an amazing place to stop, because it's one of those shops that's really, it's really big. They have two locations, like buildings next to each other that are connected. Then you have the one which is all comics and games and toys and Lego and all that stuff, and then the other side is like board gaming and Magic and Dungeons and Dragons and stuff like that. But it's just chock full, man. I mean, they have so much stuff.
Sounds like my type of shop.
Yeah. Oh, it's awesome, man. And it's organized really nicely. In fact, it's one of the biggest like Lego vendors, I think, in the area. I think they have more than like the Lego stores now. So we go there for that, but that's where I pick up my comics and stuff, supplies and stuff from those guys.
The shop that you currently go to now, you've been going since you were a kid.
Yeah.
And that makes me want to ask, do you remember your first conscious exposure to comics? Like the one experience or exposure you had to comics that made you a fan, like an absolute diehard?
Yes, man. One sec. Sorry. I'm just pulling up something. Hold on.
Yeah, all good, all good.
I'm pulling up Boba Fett reference right now. So
that is that's a great reason to to pause real quick. I might actually leave this in.
I just don't want to turn. I'm turning my head away from the mic or from the phone, so I just want to make sure that I'm pulling up my layout that I did, so I kind of make sure I know.
Keeping that consistency.
Exactly, man. Exactly. So hold on a second. Okay, so yeah, man. Back to my first exposure. My brother was a huge Spider-Man fan, so he was collecting comics before I was into it. I mean, he had all the Mark Bagley Spider-Man comics hung up on his wall, like the whole when Venom was first coming out, and Carnage, and Maximum Carnage and all that stuff. And he was just a huge Spider-Man fan, and I was kind of starting to get into art and stuff as well. And but I didn't want to get into Spider-Man because that's what my brother liked. So I found the X-Men. And then I was like, okay, this is something that I can get into that's different than my brother. And then I found Wolverine, and I was like, oh, who is this freaking character? This guy's awesome. And I was just instantly drawn to Wolverine. Like I was hooked. I loved his attitude and just how aggressive he was, and just the way that everyone was drawing him. I was a really big fan of like Mark Texeira.
Oh yeah.
And Silvestri when he was drawing Wolverine. And it just that was my thing. I was like, okay, I'm going to be different than my brother, and I'm going to these are going to be my characters, right?
That's I got 4 little brothers, so I've heard a bunch of interpretations of this story or different similar attitudes like this before.
Mm-hmm. So that was my first exposure, and then I started, getting into, Image started happening, Image comics, and I was like, whoa, what is all this? These comics are looking amazing. The colors were looking so vibrant, the art was incredible, and like new characters. And that's when I really started getting into comics, like early, the image boom.
Where is the bridge between you getting into comics and then Image? You mentioned, Mark Silvestri's Wolverine being a big influence, and then eventually landing at Top Cow, which was founded by Marcus Silvestri himself.
Yeah, exactly. I got lucky, dude. Like, I really feel like, things just kind of fell in place. I had a friend that was living in LA, and he was like, hey, there's a comic book studio right down the street from here.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, really? So I would send him my work, because we went to high school together, and he would take my work and he would take it over to the studio, to Top Cow, and show the editor there. And I would kind of like starting to get it. My name was kind of getting thrown out here and there, right? And then when I went to San Diego Comic-Con, I met that editor, and she knew who I was because my friend had gone in there and kind of got my foot in the door a little bit and put my work in front of her. And then I kind of started building a relationship, and I had a contact. I had someone that I could continue to show my work to,
mm-hmm.
and they would actually respond to my emails.
And an editor at that, like, talk about like the best point of contact you could have.
Yeah. I mean, this was like, Michael Turner's editor, Dave Finch's editor, Mark Silvestri's editor, and I was a, dude in high school trying to get my work shown. And And I just kept in touch with her until finally she was like, "Hey, you're actually getting pretty good." And she hooked me up with this independent book called The Gift, which she was, she got hired on the side to edit. Raven Gregory created and wrote that, and she was editing it for him. And they hired me. It was my first professional work. So,
well, I'm pulling it up right now, and I mean, yeah, dude, it's like this book came out in Gift number 1 came out in I think March 2003, if I'm reading this right. And yeah,
something like that.
I can definitely see why she would give you a shot. Were you getting training in art, or was it like all self-taught?
It was self-taught. I mean, I'm like one of those guys that basically just tried mimicking, Jim Lee and stuff like that. Like I would just draw Jim Lee, Todd McFarlane, Joe Madureira, but I would turn them into my own characters and I would put my own spin on it. And then I would finally start learning techniques, and then I learned a lot when I got to Top Cat because I had people helping me there, like Silvestri and, Joe Benitez was there for a bit. Eric Basildua was there at the time. And then guys like Mike Choi came in there, David Nakayama.
So talk about a come up. You went from mimicking your idols to having, your idols and their peers kind of becomes like teachers for, to you. Thanks to your friend's ambitious, thanks to your friend for actually recognizing your talent and having that drive to kind of, in a way, be your, kind of like your pseudo agent / manager in a way.
Pretty much, man. I mean,
your art rep. There you go.
Yeah. I mean, it really worked out because I actually went out there and I stayed with him, and we went and visited the studio, and it was so amazing. I mean, I went and had a little face to face with the editor. And this was back when I wasn't nearly good enough to get, the gift yet, the professional work doing the gift. Mm-hmm. But I was at least able to show her some work and just get a face to face. Like, so she knew who I was. So the next time I went to a convention, she would recognize me,
Think about how many probably portfolios and submissions she's getting. And she doesn't have anything but, a name on a piece of paper.
Totally.
Having that, a face to a name, I mean, I'm sure that probably helped out leaps and bounds.
Oh, absolutely. Because, I mean, even when I went to San Diego, she was like, hey,
I know
Tyler, come here. She was like, you don't have to wait in line or whatever. And I was like, really? Like,
that's cool.
I didn't think she would remember who I was or whatever,
What would you say was the biggest, I guess, like culture shock? I mean, did you learn something so drastic that you would not have learned had you not been in that studio?
Oh man, I mean, just probably the work. I would say just the amount of not pressure, but because I would always try to impress, like let's say Mark Silvestri or the other artists, but I also knew that I needed to have a really good work ethic to impress the editors. So I knew I couldn't take, 20 hours on one page or something because, and impress Mark Silvestri, right? I knew I couldn't do that, even though that's what I wanted to do. Because the editors were there were really the ones that were actually going to give me the gigs.
Yeah.
So I would come in during the day, work while the editors were working, then I would go home and then I'd come back at night when like Silvestri was there and the other artists. So I was I was exhausted, man. But it was worth it. It was worth it because I feel like I did both. I earned the respect of the editors, but I also, got to have time with the artists and stuff like that. And they were both valuable,
Yeah, I've always heard from, some of the other interviews I've had the opportunity to do that, from the perspective of a comic artist, it is that double-edged sword where it's like, I've got to be, sharp with my pencils, no pun intended. But at the same time, I've also got to be able to do, I've also got to be able to impress the non-artistic, side of the house. So the editors, I got to meet deadlines. I got to be able to, tell a story. I got to have a good work ethic. Like at the end of the day, you got to be a good employee,
Exactly. Yep. and that's exactly how I tried to do it.
Well, look, if your 20 plus, year career is evidence of where that attitude will lead you and that mindset will lead you, then I think everyone should take a page out of that.
Yeah, for sure, man. I think so.
I always love asking comic artists who is in their Mount Rushmore of comic book artists. And it sounds like you've had the pleasure of working with some of the folks that I put in my Mount Rushmore, the Jim Lees, I'd even, the Mark Silvestris. But I'm curious, who for you is in your top 5 favorite comic book artists? Yo, this is Botter. Sorry for interrupting this episode, but I'll keep it brief. I wanted to let you know about a massive sale we have going on over at the Shortbox store on all of our merchandise and apparel. That's theshortboxstore.bigcartel.com. You can now save 20% off your entire order using the discount code YOO, Y-O-O. So if you've been waiting for the right time to finally buy that gauntlet snapback, or if you ever wanted to buy any of the shirts you see me wear on the podcast, well, now's your chance to get them for a steal. We still have a few sizes left of everything, but they won't last long, and once they're gone, they are gone. And then I mentioned that all of our apparel is screen printed on high quality material. None of that heat transfer or direct to garment stuff. Our shirts are some of the most comfortable ones you'll ever wear, and the hats look even better in person. So wear your support for the Shortbox Nation proudly, knowing that you're going to look damn good doing it. Get to theshortboxstore.bigcartel.com as soon as you can, and don't forget to use that discount code YOO, Y-O-O, to save 20% off your entire order. All of this information can be found in this episode's show notes if you want to get there faster. Thanks for not pressing fast forward. Now back to the show.
Top 5 would be Joe Madureira. It's probably my number one.
Mad Joe, man.
He's just so good, man. I just love his style. Second would probably be Silvestri and or Jim Lee. It was always back and forth between those guys, man.
And that's not a bad back and forth. That's not like a bad second place to be tying against,
For sure. J. Scott Campbell's up there, and probably like Dave Finch.
Oh yeah.
It's really tough to really put a number on them. But, like I said before, growing up, before I even discovered any of those artists, Mark Texeira was my favorite artist for like a long time,
Mark Texeira did a Ghost Rider run. And I can't recall what year. It was like early 2000 or mid 2000s or something that completely like both wowed me and scared the hell out of me when I first was getting into comic books. But even my dad was like, wow, he is really going to some places. But we always enjoyed like looking at the art, just the art, even though the story was all over the place and it's a Ghost Rider comic. So you can imagine all the different, things they were doing. But Mark Texeira is, I don't think he gets mentioned enough in certain circles. But I do notice that he's like a comic artist, I
agree. Yeah, I think he inspired a lot of people or whatever, years ago. And I'm not sure exactly what happened, but yeah, you just kind of started seeing less and less of his work,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But I think he's doing something now for that AWA Upshot.
Yeah, from isn't it Alex Alonso that runs that? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I heard that Texeira was doing something with those guys.
Speaking about extensive careers, Tyler, you've got a very extensive career. Your work goes back, like we just were able to find, as far back as 2003 with The Gifted. And then when you look at, your transition into, the big two, and that's not, even counting the other publishers that you've worked with, Valiant, Image, etc. But just looking at your work for the big two, Marvel, you've done, X-Men Phoenix War Song with Greg Pak. You even got to work with Mark Silvestri in that series. I was introduced to your work, I think, in the 2008 for the Ultimate Fantastic Four when you were working with Mike Carey. You've recently done covers for, Absolute Carnage versus Deadpool. And then if we were to go into your DC titles, that's its own podcast alone. But I think some of the highlights, Action Comics with Dan Jurgens, your work is all over the place with Green Lantern Corps with Tony Bedard. You've done Teen Titans, some amazing covers on Deathstroke with Tony Daniels, Immortal Men, et cetera, et cetera. And I was curious, with all of that experience working in comics, who have been some of the most impactful colleagues on your career? I mean, like, who immediately comes to mind when you consider someone who has taught you the most, whether indirectly or directly?
Yeah. I mean, dude, definitely Tony Bedard was one of those guys that, I think we still have a good friendship and everything. And he was basically my first writer. Well, he was the first writer that I worked with at DC. So I really got a good chance to actually collaborate with him. And I was new at DC, and I was a little nervous, and I had just signed a contract, and I was kind of coming from Top Cow, and he just he was fun. He made me feel pretty comfortable, and I think we did some really, really cool stuff together with all the Green Lantern universe. I'd love to work with him again.
You've had some long runs, man. And I think that's what I have a lot of respect for artists that stay on one title and do the interior works for an extended amount of time, because I just know how much effort and time gets put into it.
Yeah. Dude, there's been times where I would have stayed, even longer. I mean, it was never really my decision to jump off of something. It was typically like, hey, we want to put you on this other book, or we're going to relaunch this, or we're going to do that. Like with Green Lantern Corps, where I first started, I was just working on those books and having an absolute, great time. And then they were like, hey, we're going to do the new 52.
Okay.
We're going to launch some new books. We're going to keep you on a Kyle Rayner Green Lantern book, but it's going to be this Green Lantern New Guardians. So it was the same team, same everything, but it was a new title, so, and then I did, I don't know, 12 issues, 13 issues or something like that. And then, did Teen Titans for, a time period, I don't even know, a couple of years or whatever. And then when I ended up doing Deathstroke, like, that's a book I would have stayed on for as long as I possibly could.
Wow.
But they were doing Rebirth, and that's when I started doing Action Comics. So there's always some reason why I had to stop doing what I was doing.
So it sounds like if you had the opportunity to go back and stay on a title longer, it would have been that Deathstroke series of Tony Daniels?
Probably. Yeah, because I was just having so much fun with that, man.
Well, I know when that Deathstroke series was consistent or was coming out, I had a lot of friends that were collecting that book that, that was their favorite book on their pull list. And I think it's safe to say a majority of it was because of the artwork.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people told me that too. That's why I was sad.
Huh? Yeah, and I'm glad to hear your Mount Rushmore and those names that you mentioned, because when I look at your work, I see hints of, like, the J. Scott Campbell, the Mad Joe, the Mark Silvestri. I think you excel at eye-catching and high adrenaline action scenes, as well as dynamic composition with characters and your layouts.
I think that's kind of what's gotten me to do a lot of cover gigs, is I think they kind of see, like, maybe there's a high energy to it or something. And
it sells. It sells.
I've always
for
tried
sure.
to get, almost like an in your face type of vibe, like, hey, jumping off the page, it's always been a fun thing for me to try to achieve.
And, I tried to count the number of variant covers that you've done, and I think I stopped at, like, after 50. I was like, okay, he's probably done in the triple digits as far as variant covers. Do you keep track of, like, how many variant covers and whatnot that you work on?
No, not really, man. I mean, it's been a lot, honestly. I should count them though. That'd be kind of fun to go back and just how many it covers in general. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Have I done? It'd be kind of fun to do. It'd be hard, but I should try that.
No, I mean, if you want to have if any of our listeners want to have a fun exercise, type in Tyler Kirkham variant cover into Google, and then go to the images tab and just have a blast. Some fantastic images will pop up.
Cool.
Let me ask this: do any variant covers come to mind? Like any of your favorites or ones that were maybe most impactful? And have you kept any original artwork from those variant covers?
I don't keep all of it, no, but there are definitely some that I have a harder time selling than others, and some that I wish I wouldn't have sold.
Which ones have you sold? Which ones have you sold that you now regret?
Couple of the main ones are the Deadpool Back in Black cover, where it was just kind of a close up of Deadpool being taken over by Venom. The book is called Deadpool Back in Black, and it's a close up of the symbiote just kind of overtaking Deadpool's head. It's really close.
I'm
head on shot
right now.
Because I did that, and I think I sold it for way too little, and I've had a lot of people inquire about it.
Oh my God, Tyler, that is badass.
So that one, and then there's a Deathstroke cover. I think it was issue 13. And he's kind of going head to head with Red Hood, and they're like pointing guns at each other and stuff. I've had quite a few offers on that, even though I don't own it anymore. But there's just some that I get hit up a lot. Like, hey, do you know where this cover is? Is it available? Do you know who owns it? And typically I don't.
Can you send me their address? Because I'm about to go grab it, whether they like it or not.
Exactly.
I mean, how does the variant cover process work? I mean, do you have like a middleman or a middle person that kind of fields requests, or do you work directly with like the publishers that are looking for variant covers?
It's the publishers. They'll just email me and say, "Hey, Tyler, we've got a request for Star Wars War of the Bounty Hunters issue 2 from a retailer or whatever. Here's the concept." And here's the deadline. Can you do it? Basically.
How many variant covers are currently on your plate right now?
I got just five or so. Yeah, 5 lined up right now, and then I'm working on this connecting set for Berserker, for Boom. But yeah, I mean they're not all due like this week or anything. So
wait, the Keanu Reeves comic, right?
Yeah. I've done a couple of covers for that already.
Your art style is perfect for that book, and on so many levels.
They're not out yet, but keep your eye out for those.
Oh, absolutely. So would you do covers for the rest of your career, or could you be enticed to come back to a monthly series if the right character or title or creative team was there?
Yeah, I mean, I've always said if there's a good Wolverine project, I'd do that for sure.
Have you done have you done much Wolverine?
No, man, I haven't. I've only drawn
Marvel. What are you doing? Come on.
Right? I was talking to Benjamin Percy actually in Texas a couple of weeks ago. We did a signing together, and I was like, "Dude, you're writing Wolverine. I want to draw Wolverine. Let me know if you ever need any help."
Do you do commissions, and have you been able to do like a Wolverine commission at all?
Yeah, I don't do a lot of big commissions anymore. I mean, it's typically like a bust or a chest up shot at a convention. And that, I've done, multiple Wolverines sketches. I don't think I've really done a big 11x17 commission piece though.
You know what? Marvel or Benjamin Percy, make this happen. I feel like your art style would be. I mean, it would just lend itself to Wolverine perfectly.
Yeah, I'd love to do it. I mean, I would have a blast doing it.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Taking it like in kind of that Deathstroke direction, just that type of look. I think.
Now, is it safe to assume that covers are, and I'm using air quotes, easier than interior artwork, or I mean, does it take you just as much time and effort?
No, it doesn't take as much time. I mean, because for one, I mean, I don't get to do as many. So, with interiors, you're you're working on a new page, almost every day. I mean, and it gets a little daunting, but so you don't. I guess it's kind of hard. Like you don't get to draw as much, but yet you get to take more time on your pieces.
We've got a running joke here on the short box that we consider any artist that has made it to that, cover art / variant cover only kind of gig or space in their career as successful. It's like, yo, they made it. Like, I think about like Alex Ross, who is now, if he even does covers anymore, exclusively covers, or your Adam Hughes. And I'm sure you can think of a bunch of other names of artists who have reached that level of, well, I only do covers now. We kind of see them, we joke like, yo, they've made it. They're only doing covers. They're good to go. I mean, do you have the same kind of feelings when it comes to covers? Is that kind of like is that the consensus among other comic artists?
Yeah, I mean that's dude, that was a goal like for a while, but I mean,
I don't blame you.
But yet, it's sometimes you don't feel content doing that, and you want to go back and tell stories. So, but because I didn't necessarily want to do, I don't know, man, like some other book for another publisher that I wasn't super, super excited about. So that's when I started, writing my own stuff and trying to get a fix, my storytelling fix that way. So that's what I've been kind of working on my own ideas and creations.
Which is a good segue to talk about Final Boss, which is your first, I believe, campaign sponsored or campaign funded project that you did through Indiegogo. I looked at the Indiegogo today, and I think it's safe to say by 248% over the original goal. It is one hell of a success. So congratulations on getting Final Boss funded. Can you tell me a little bit more about Final Boss and what it's about?
Yeah, for sure, man. And this is my first crowdfunded.
There you go. Yeah.
Like campaign, for an original story. Like I did do an art book, I don't know, 5-6 years ago that I put on Kickstarter. But this is my first like actual comic graphic novel project that I'm doing this through, or utilizing the service. And I just thought it'd be a good place to do it because there's a lot of things that I want to do that I can interact with, the fans and be creative with them. If Final Boss, takes off and continues and does really well, like I want to be able to have the fans vote for like, hey, which one of these bosses do you want to be in issue 2? You know what I mean? Or stuff like that. Like, and get input, do like polls and stuff like that. So I just have a lot of fun stuff that I want to do with it. But to kind of tell you a little bit about what it is if you haven't gathered by just looking at the images and seeing the trailer, it's a nod on classic fighting games, like beat 'em ups, like Streets of Rage, Double Dragon. It's Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, Tekken. You know what I mean? It's that vibe. But I wanted to develop that type of world in a comic book, not a game where you get to pick your characters and you always want to know more about them, and you just hope that one day there's going to be a movie or something. I wanted to develop those type of characters, but actually tell their story and give it that classic video game vibe.
And I'm glad you brought up, some of the other video games, because when I saw the trailer, which, I mean, kudos on having a trailer. I always think like a successful Kickstarter or Indiegogo, it's got to have like a nice eye-catching trailer, which, a Final Boss does. But I got like vibes of Double Dragon meets like King of Fighters, like how all of the character designs were always like very rugged, like 90s action movie looking characters or whatnot. But yeah, I mean it of course the comic looks great, and I know it's based on your longtime passion for fighting games. What are some fighting games that are inspirations to you artistically?
Oh man, I mean, I just remember looking at the old, I don't know if it was Game Informer, but one of those old game magazines, and they used to have like an artist that would he was like he must have just been like the actual magazine artist, because he would always draw these character profiles or whatever of different games, and he would have like all the Mortal Kombat characters, and it was kind of like a comic book style. And I just loved it. And then you had the guys come along from like Udon Studios who did all the all those all the Street Fighter stuff, and just the style that they used for the Street Fighter versus, or the Capcom versus Marvel stuff. I just love that, man. It really influenced me and inspired me in growing up, honestly. And in school, I would create my own character selection screens and just design my own characters, right? Like fighting game characters.
Oh yeah, come on. Who didn't do that in the middle of a history class in the back of the room, hoping the teacher did not walk up and down the aisle and ask to see your notebook?
I don't know, man. I've always wanted to do something like that.
Yeah.
And I just thought, I'm going to make a character that I can basically develop him as he levels up and goes up the food chain, if you will, or whatever, and get stronger. And finally, I'm going to create a story that gives him purpose, and develop all these other side characters and different storylines and different directions that he can go. And it just started coming together. I was like, man, I'm really liking this. And finally I started actually writing, I have like 4 issues written, and like I have 10 issues kind of plotted out to the direction I want to go. So I've got a lot of content that I want to do. I just, I want to know I want to make sure that people like it. And it's something that I should, develop.
Well, look, the campaign was successful by over 200. I think if my whatever math is right, like 240%. It sounds like people are definitely interested in this collision of 90s action movies meets video games.
And I've always been a huge Jean-Claude Van Damme fan. Like I used to just love Bloodsport and Kickboxer and Lionheart.
Yes, you know what? That is the vibe I got from that trailer. I was like, okay, this is King of Fighters meets Streets or Double Dragon meets Bloodsport. Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one to throw in there.
Yep. That's what I wanted it to be. I wanted that type of that feel. You know what I mean? Almost like a nostalgic feel. That's what I want. I want people to read it and have it kind of throwback.
And you're saying that a part of the inspiration to launch or create Final Boss, launch the Indiegogo campaign, was you wanted to scratch that itch of telling a story through art, right?
Yes.
Like I jokingly said, I've always looked at, cover art or artists who reach that cover artist only status as like, look, I'm coasting, I'm good to go. But, that is definitely, I will admit, ignorant of me to think that an artist would not still want to tell, a story through their art. And so that's really cool that you were able to launch your own indie creator property through Indiegogo and be successful at it too. That's really awesome.
Thanks, man. Yeah. And it is true. Like once when you're just doing covers and stuff, you miss that. Like you miss that, creative process of actually, drawing the characters in a story. I mean, because obviously some covers are story focused and mean something, but some and most exclusive variant covers and stuff don't actually have to be involved in whatever's happening on the interior of the book at all. So you get to draw amazing images of the characters, but most of the time it's there's no story behind what you're doing. You know what I mean?
You're responsible for both the writing and the art for Final Boss. How is how is that balancing both roles of writer and artist?
So fun, man. I mean, this is my first time that I've done this. Well, not first time. I did do a creator owned back in, what was that? Maybe 6 or 7 years ago for Zenoscope called Screwed Project Frankenstein. And I created that and co-wrote it with another guy. but I didn't do the art. I did like most of the covers and all the character designs and stuff.
So when it came to
Um,
Final Boss, was it pretty easy to jump back in the role of writer, or did you have to reach out to anyone? Did you have to reference anything or get spun up or teach yourself new things?
oh yeah, I mean, I never really have written a full script like I did on this. But I wanted to know that I could do it if I had to. So it's more done in that old school Marvel style where I basically plotted it out for myself to draw, and then I went back in and put the dialogue in there where I knew it was going to be, and that's probably how most artists write. I'd bet you. I'm sure they're probably doing it as easy for themselves as possible, and then going back in and adding the dialogue where it fits in and makes sense.
And I'm looking at the Indiegogo right now, which I'll have a link in our show notes for anyone interested. And
Cool.
You've got some pretty awesome perks and rewards. I mean, you've got covers by Brett Booth, Ryan Otley of the first issue, but you've also got, at the highest tier, this really badass deluxe box set that looks like an old Nintendo game package.
Uh-huh. Exactly, man. It
That is
looks
sick.
that's what we were going for, was like that classic Super Nintendo box design. And we even created just for fun, like a system name, like the Z box or whatever.
Yeah, I see that.
And I just wanted to have that feel. I want it to look like it was it's in the same category as your Street Fighters, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like something that maybe was a game.
What are some titles that are among your favorite when it comes to video games?
Oh man, my favorite game ever is the Elder Scrolls Skyrim.
Man, I have not heard that in
Yeah.
a minute.
Oh dude, it's
My brothers
I
were
did
on
put
that
some
game
time into that
hard.
one.
Yeah, oh yeah. I think a lot of I think a lot of folks in 2011 probably could can probably claim triple digit numbers when it comes to the number of hours spent on Elder Scrolls Skyrim.
Oh man, such a great game.
Oh yeah. You know what?
Can't
And
wait for the next one.
I've also got another tab pulled up, looking at all of the Street Fighter Udon series from 2005, and
Yeah.
it's like a wave of nostalgia because I love Street Fighter. I think anyone that has listened to this show for even more than 10 episodes knows I am one of the biggest fans of Street Fighter, and I love all of the comic adaptations that was coming out through Udon and even like Malibu. But some of these names, man, I like Alvin. Remember Alvin Lee? Alvin
Oh
Lee
yeah,
was
dude. Alvin Lee's
in-
awesome. I'm actually decent friends with him, man. Like
really.
we'll hang out at shows and stuff. Yeah, I'm like if I see him at a convention, we'll go get dinner or something.
I remember when that 2005 Udon series dropped, which was only like 5 or 6 issues. It wasn't that long at all, but it was Alvin Lee. You had Ken Soo Chung. It was like, oh my God, they literally transformed the video games into comic books. I need every cover. I was buying every cover I could.
Yep. And then they even had some pages by Joe Matt, didn't they?
Come on, man. I forgot about that. Yes. Oh my God. Yeah, that was a great series. And you know who, speaking about video game art, my all-time among my comic Mount Rushmore, and this is like maybe a little cheating in a way, but I fuck it. It's my Mount Rushmore. I always throw the artist from Marvel vs. Capcom 2. His name was Bingus, but he had a bunch of other different names as well. He to me is one of my all-time favorite artists. That Marvel vs. Capcom 2 artwork, I love that game for a lot of reasons, gameplay wise, but art wise, I could just stare at loading screens all day.
Oh, I know, man. And just the animation, like the 2D. I just like that 2D like animation.
My other favorite one is Street Fighter Alpha 3 because the artwork is very similar. No, it's still like 2D kind of comic booky, and I think that's why Street Fighter 4 was such a I think it's why I responded negatively upon first playing it because I was like, wait, where's the 2D artwork? What is this 3D crap?
Exactly. I know what you're talking about, man, because it just started to change,
Yes, and I miss it. And even when like Marvel's Capcom 3 was announced, I was like, well, that's it. The days of 2D, fighting game artwork is gone, man.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
But look, Final Boss looks like it would scratch that itch for anyone that loves those fighting games or 90s action movies. Definitely check it out. And Tyler, I got to ask, because it looks like you're shipping a majority of the perks, the comics, and the different things in October. Is it still too late for people to get in on this, even though the campaign is successful and done?
No way, man. I mean, it's
You're like, give me your money. No, absolutely.
Yeah,
Send them.
crowdfundings. I mean, just funding is the beginning. Like now, that should give people hope and confidence that they're actually going to get their book. I mean, it's still going. I did like a 30-day campaign with the possibility of another extension, so people can absolutely jump in there and score anything they want right now. Like, and they should, if they think it sounds interesting, they should definitely jump on there and back it. And once it gets, once the campaign's over and everything, we can get books to the printers, and we'll start shipping them. So, and
I got to commend you on a very reasonable goal. I mean, it was only, respectively, a goal of $5,000, which was to primarily just cover you paying your team of what colorist, inker, and whatnot, and then also to get the book made. It sounds like you just wanted to make this book. It doesn't sound like you're in it for like a crazy monetary gain. It sounds like a passion project that you really just wanted to see come to light.
Pretty much, man. That I wanted to keep it low because it is a passion thing, and I did that in hopes of, obviously funding for sure. And then just hoping that people would feel confident that it was actually going to happen, because if something doesn't fund and the goal is too far to reach, then most of the people that have backed it, they're not going to get anything. So, I mean, they'll get their money back, but yeah. I just wanted to achieve that goal.
And I'm glad you said that, because I've been I've backed a few projects where I think the goal was a little ambitious and it just didn't happen. And then, I got my money back, but when you fund a project that you're really looking forward to, a lot of times it's like, I don't want my money back. I really wanted to see this come to to light.
Yep. Me too, man.
So yeah, listeners, check out this Final Boss Indiegogo. Like I said, I'll have a link in the show notes. Tyler, I wanted to go back to talking about comics and variant, specifically this Moon Knight #1 variant that is coming out Wednesday. July 21st. Like I said, it is an exclusive store variant to my own comic shop that I frequent on a weekly basis, Gotham City Limit. Tyler, your Moon Knight variant is clearly a homage to John Romita Jr.'s classic Amazing Spider-Man #238 cover, which also serves as the first appearance of Hobgoblin. Have you ever met John Romita Jr.?
Man, I've never met him. I never have. I would like to have. I do know that I get a lot of requests to homage like his covers, though.
Really?
I feel like he's definitely had a lot of the most iconic covers out there, that people recognize.
With a career as long as his, like, yeah. I mean, think about. I don't even want to think about how many iconic or classic covers he's done that has been homaged. Like, think about that number.
Totally. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, he's definitely popular.
So are you a fan of like Hobgoblin or that Ron Frenz and JR run of Amazing Spider-Man?
Dude, Hobgoblin was always like the better Goblin, I feel. He just looks scarier.
Yeah, he's badass.
Yeah, I like his design a lot.
And think about all the covers think about his like early covers. I mean, the one that immediately comes to mind, I don't have the number in front of me, but he's holding like Spider-Man. Like, I think either Spider-Man or his mask. Like, all of his covers, he's tearing Spider-Man a new one, Like, he's giving Spider-Man a rub for his money.
Totally.
So what is it about Amazing Spider-Man #238, that cover, that inspired you to base your Moon Knight variant on?
Well, gosh, I can't remember. I feel like that one was requested by the retailer, I thought. I'm pretty sure it was. Unless I.
You know what?
No, it wasn't. It was. I think it was requested by Gotham City.
You know what? It is starting to ring a bell. I think Ben mentioned. I think Ben had mentioned that, he had this one because he's a huge Spider-Man fan as well. So it's starting to line up. It makes sense. Which, I mean, when you look at it, it is a seamless transition and homage. Like it works for Moon Knight so well. So I'm glad that like he kind of put that bug in your ear.
Totally. And I like I said, I've been wanting to do that cover for a while, and I Moon Knight is a perfect example, especially when he's getting a new costume,
Come on. Yeah.
It just made sense.
Are you familiar with the new creative team that's doing it? I see the writer is Jed McKay, and then artist is Alessandro Cappuccio, if I'm saying that right. I apologize.
I'm not. I'm excited to read it though. Hopefully I get like some comps from Marvel, I'll read it for sure.
Where does Moon Knight rank in your list of characters, whether as a character you personally like or because of artistic reasons?
Definitely up there as far as design and a character that I would love to draw, man. He's basically Marvel's Batman or something. You know what I mean? And then what Dave Finch did with the character? Oh my gosh,
dude!
Man.
Yeah, no, that's
insane,
man. Yeah, to be honest, I think and that's a good example of like I hopped on Moon Knight for that run because of David. And I mean, David Finch was like at the top of the game and his game as well during that run of his. But as soon as he left, I left. I know.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of what happens. Me too, I think. But I follow books for artists, most of the time, anyways. Though, so
same. Who are some of your favorite artists now, as far as like whether they be new artists or artists still pumping out work and comics?
Let's see. So, what am I buying right now, man? I'm buying. I bought the new the Boba or the Star Wars book because I love multiple. Oh, I'm buying Tony Daniels is a huge one for me, man. Like I love Noctura. That's really, really good right now.
Isn't that his work with? Is it Scott Snyder? He's doing Noctura.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the new, I think Gary Frank.
Oh, Geiger, right? Geiger with Jeff Johns.
Really cool.
Gary Frank is so good.
I'm reading that. I like his style a ton. Gosh, it used to be amazing when I used to just get all the comps for free from DC.
I bet.
I would just look, I would just look at them for art and stuff, but I don't get them anymore,
No, well, do they? So when it comes to comps, do they send you comps of books that you've worked on, whether that be covers or interior or whatever, or do they just send you titles that you request?
No, well, when I was under contract with DC, I would just get all the books for free. Like they would send me boxes of them.
That's cool.
And I would just, I'd get the collections and flip through them or do whatever I want. Read certain ones, and then, but then they went to digital, and they would just give you like a digital, like a comiXology code. And then because I'm not exclusive with DC anymore, so I don't get those perks,
Yeah. I mean, from a business perspective, I can see why they'd only send digital. Because think about how much. One, think about how many comps they're sending. Two, that postage must have been crazy.
Oh yeah, all the time too.
Tyler, I want to take a shift from comics. Thank you so much for answering my questions about Moon Knight, the Moon Knight variant. Once again, I'm ordering 3, one for myself, and I'll be giving the 2 other ones away. So listeners, stay tuned until the end to learn how you can win some free Moon Knight variants. But Tyler, I wanted to ask you about your other project. So you've got Final Boss, your first creator-owned, crowd-funded, sourced comic book that's successful. But I noticed on your Instagram that you've worked with your father for to design a cocktail diffuser that allows you to easily smoke your favorite cocktails at home. It's called Smoky Skulls Cocktail, right?
Yeah, it is, man. Yeah, I know it's completely, different from what people see me do, regularly. But, I mean, I don't know, man. I just over the past, 5 years or so, I've just kind of gotten into some of the, just a little bit of a passion for whiskey and scotch and stuff. And I don't drink it a lot, but when I would go out to conventions or something, we'd go to a bar or whatever, and I was introduced to smoked old fashions from a friend of mine. And I was like, this is really cool. This is really good. But you would always pay a premium for it. Like they would charge you $5 or $10 more just for the, the smoke that they would kind of infuse into it or whatever. They would put a dome over it and they would pump some smoke into it. But it just kind of gave you that like different smoky aroma and taste. You know what I mean? It just made it a little bit different. And I just, my parents have all this like statue molding equipment at their house because my mom makes and sells little statues and stuff. And I was just like, I want to try to build something with the stuff. And I had my dad help me, and we just kind of started farting around, and I was using it at home just to try it out. And I was like, this is actually kind of cool. It works really well. And maybe I could actually market this thing,
No, it looks pretty. I mean, it's a skull. It's like a skull automatically. It's a certain level of cool to it. But it looks like, I mean, from that the video that you posted on your Instagram, it looks like it works pretty well. And so your involvement was the design portion, right?
Yeah, design and just measurements and just getting things kind of the look and the color and everything, because we're adding pigment and coming up with the correct formula of cement and plaster. And my dad, he was basically helping me come up with the measurements on what to mix, and this is going to work, and we're going to be able to drill through this, and because we have to drill the holes in it, and he had all the equipment and all this stuff to actually make the molds, and we had to build some silicone molds, and this is stuff that they've been doing. He's been working with my mom on her stuff, so they had all this stuff ready to go, and I was able to just kind of come in with a fun idea, and then they helped me kind of put it together.
I imagine your dad, if he's anything like mine, he would have said something like, "Finally, that comic book stuff is coming in handy for once."
No, it's probably the opposite. I think he's like, this is crazy. What are you doing? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, because I think he already knows, like, hey, this is a little bit outside of your wheelhouse or something, But we've been having fun. I've been, it's been good to kind of spend some time with him over there, because he has like a workshop at his house, because he's cool. A contractor. So
I can't think of anything more American than a father and son bonding over a smoked whiskey at that.
Yeah. And it's, and it's funny because neither of us really like drink a lot, but it's just like kind of the occasional, like, hey, let's celebrate. And we'll have a sip here or there or whatever, but it's just fun. Like it's just something that I've kind of gotten into a little bit more. Like, my buddy Percy, who owns Ibis Comics, he knows a lot about whiskeys and stuff like that. And he's kind of gotten me into it a little bit more. And, whenever we're out, wherever, whether it's New Orleans or, France or wherever we're at a convention, we'll try to find new stuff and just, hit the whiskey bar if we can or something, just to try it. It's just fun.
So I've recently started to dip my toes into the world of whiskey and bourbon, and in large part to, honestly, my barber. He's really gotten into it. So anytime I go get a haircut, he'll give me a recommendation to try out. So he's put me on to like Whistle Pig, Elijah Craig, Buffalo Trace, 1792. There's one more that was really good that I can't recall at the moment. But I wanted to know from you, what's your favorite whiskey at the moment? If you had to give me a recommendation to try out outside of the ones I just listed. Oh, it's Suntory. That's the other one. The Suntory is the other one. If you had to give me a recommendation for a whiskey or bourbon to try out, what would it be?
Well, my go-to, and I'm always trying different stuff, but my go-to is always is Woodford Reserve. It's just good, man. Like and I don't always have it, but that's like the one that I'll always probably go back to.
So my girlfriend's family is from Kentucky, and they celebrate the Kentucky Derby every year, and they always buy the whatever the Kentucky Derby bottle of Woodford Reserve is. And I got to
Oh,
admit,
cool.
it ended up inspiring me because I was like, man, that's got to be some expensive ass whiskey. And that is not the case. And I actually, I've been picking it up where I can, and it's definitely one of my go-to ones lately.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Your Johnny Walker. I have like a Glenlivet 15 at the moment. But it was UFC and McGregor over the past weekend, and we went and got a couple of bottles of Proper 12, just to. Just to but I don't mind it. It's actually not bad, man. Like we made it was called Proper 12 Punch, and it was a bottle of that. With some lemonade, lemon juice, cut up lemons, and you put in a bottle of red wine on top, and it's actually really good, man. Yeah, and the wine kind of sits at the top, and as the drink gets lower, you start kind of getting through that whiskey and lemonade, and then you start getting into the wine, which is pretty cool because it's almost like you're finishing it off with the wine,
Tyler, I'm definitely going. I mean this when I say I'm going to try that. That is.
It's good. You really got to
intrigued my interest a lot. You are a man of class and apparently good taste.
Right on, man.
Well, look, Tyler. With all that being said, I appreciate your time and hopping on this call and sharing so many great things with us. I wanted to close out this chat with something that I've been doing recently these past couple of episodes because. We have a lot of listeners who are aspiring comic creators, whether it be artists or writers themselves. And I always like to ask our guest, what's a piece of valuable advice that you'd give to aspiring comic creators, maybe in your case specifically artists, looking to break into comics? I'm looking for something that you wish someone would have told you as you were trying to get your foot in the door.
Yeah, I know a lot of people that I'll meet at conventions or something, and they'll bring me a small portfolio or something, and they're trying to break in and they have, maybe 5 pinups or something. And then they won't have any interior pages or any storytelling pages, but yet they want to draw comics and it's just very hard to get in that way. You know what I mean? Like you have to be able to tell stories and do interiors and I always tell them that, like, hey, you got to start focusing on some of this other stuff and don't just focus on these pinups and covers or whatever. And then you'll see people that'll come in and they'll say, I want to draw comics, but I don't have, I don't really draw that much or whatever. And the other thing I would always tell them is, well, you have to draw at least every day. At least draw something, sketch something, just pick away at something. You always have to be mastering it. Like it can't be one of those things where you just get inspired and then go draw. Like you really have to always be working at it.
Yeah.
Especially if you want to do it for a living, because obviously inspiration helps, but if you want to do it for a living, you have to just do it, even if you don't want to be doing it. Because that's the only way you're ever going to get better. So,
what would you say to someone that is maybe struggling to find inspiration or getting over that artist block?
Yeah. For me, like like watching Attack on Titan and stuff, just stuff that you love, that you're passionate about. It starts, it gets the juices flowing for sure. Like it gets you feeling creative, and I know. Like a friend of mine will typically, if he's playing a video game or something, he'll be like, man, I really want to draw, because it just, other art inspires art, I feel. And that's exactly what happened with me growing up, was loving comic art, and that's what I wanted to do. So I would say consume the stuff you love, and it's just going to help you feel like you want to create it,
That's great advice, Tyler. Thank you.
Sure.
And I think with that being said, we can go ahead and wrap up this episode. Tyler, thank you so much for your time, your stories, and your words of encouragement. I want to go ahead and give you a chance to share where people can follow you, whether that be for new projects or just to reach out or just to follow along with what you got going on. Where can people follow you or reach out?
Yeah, man. So, I have my website, tylerkirkhamart.com, and that's where I post, most of the stuff that I have for sale, whether it's exclusive variant covers, mystery boxes, the occasional, remark or sketch or something. And then I have, of course, the Indiegogo campaign going on right now, which you can link to for Final Boss. And that's going on right now. It's we're accepting pledges and backers, and you're basically pre-ordering what you want, right? If you want to pre-order the issue, you go on there, you back it, and you're going to get the book coming in your mailbox, when the books are printed. And then, of course, the Smoky Skulls on Kickstarter, which you can link to, and my Instagram and Twitter is just at Tyler Kirkhamart.
Fantastic. And once again, I'll have links to all of this in the show notes, so make sure to check that out for helpful links for all of this. With that being said, Tyler, thanks again so much. You enjoy the rest of your night, and hopefully we can have you on the Short Box sooner than later.
Absolutely, man. Thanks so much. It was a lot of fun.
And there you have it, Shortbox Nation. Let's give it up one more time for Tyler Kirkham. And do yourselves a favor and check out Final Boss on Indiegogo and get a copy of Tyler's Moon Knight #1 variant. The Gotham City Limit store exclusive variant is available for pre-order right now at GothamCityLimit.com, but it'll be hitting most comic shops and online stores Wednesday, July 21st. Now, I did mention that we'd be giving 2 copies of this variant away. And here's how it'll go. If you live in Jacksonville, stay tuned to our social media pages. Both Instagram and Twitter will announce the contest the day that the comic drops on July 21st. You'll have to pick it up from Gotham City Limit. But if you don't live in Jax, if you're an out-of-state listener, send us an email titled Moon Knight and tell us why Moon Knight is a character that you enjoy. Tell us if he's your favorite character or recommend your favorite Moon Knight comic book. We'll pick one winner next time we record, and I'll go ahead and personally ship it out to the winner. Now, even though this episode is done, the conversation doesn't have to stop here. Tell us what you thought about this episode. Feel free to reach out to us on social media or email us. Send us a short email to read next episode. Send it to our inbox at theshortboxjacks@gmail.com. And look, it's a dog-eat-dog world out here in these podcast streets, so toss us a bone and hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss our conversation next week with graphic novelist and webtoon creator Michael Regina. But if that's too long for you to wait, consider joining our Patreon community for some new bonus episodes that we're about to drop. We're recording another episode of our spin-off podcast series, Pilot's License, and it's all about Justice League Unlimited. I'll have a link to our Patreon community in the show notes for those of you interested. But in the meantime, Shortbox Nation, take care of yourselves. Have a great week. And please continue to make mine and yours Shortbox. Peace.